bring in Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Welcome to Fox News Sunday, Mr. Secretary. Good to have you.
Shannon, good to see you.
Okay, so let's start with the bill. You wrote a piece over at foxnews.com, an op-ed, and you say one of the main issues is ending illegal immigration as a key part of this. It's about redirecting an estimated $249 billion in annual wages paid to people here in the U.S. illegally, to those who are here legally, or to American citizens. You say this: ending the black market of undocumented labor by funding enforcement of our existing immigration laws will result in a massive pay raise for the working class. So that begs the question then, if that's the case, if there are higher wages, businesses are going to have to pass that on somewhere else. Does that end up then with the American consumer?
Well, I don't think it has to. And look, what we saw was this mass unfettered immigration across the border, whether it's 12 or 22 million people who came in, suppressed working people's wages. And for 20 years, the big lie was that this kind of immigration didn't hurt working people. Now, economists have come out and said, oh, what a surprise. Even the laws of supply and demand work in the low-end labor market. So I talk about in that editorial what I call parallel prosperity, that for years Wall Street has done well. Now it's time for Main Street to do well, and they can both do well. And that's the one big beautiful bill. That's the beauty of this. It helps Wall Street and Main Street.
So let's talk about those jobs, because there are skeptics who say, the American workers and those who say who are sort of their wages depressed, that they're not going to step up and take some of these jobs. Here's a bit of analysis from libertarian-leading Cato Institute. They say the U.S. labor market remains tight, and there are simply not millions and millions of idle American workers sitting on the sidelines just itching to take these newly opened jobs. To the extent Trump's broad deportation promises come to fruition, we can expect many immigrant-dependent industries to suffer and few American workers to gain. So is it overly optimistic to think there are Americans who will flood to these jobs?
I don't think that it's overly optimistic to believe that at a price, Americans will do these jobs. But, you know, again, with these depressed wages, we've seen a lot of people drop out of the workforce, especially men aged 16 to 35 are in an era of despondency, and they have dropped out of the workforce. They are having health issues, they're having mental health issues, and I think that they will come back in. And look, this is part of President Trump's agenda. You know, we're doing peace deals, trade deals, and tax deals, and the trade deals and the tax deals are going to bring back working class jobs with good wages, with good health care.
So let's talk about tariffs, because obviously we're hitting this deadline. We think this week the president's talked about sending out letters to a number of our top trading partners about, listen, if you can't get a deal, kind of this is the drop dead deadline. We are going to drop a new set of tariffs come August 1st. So is it fair to say there's a bit of a pause on the July 9th deadline for some of these trading partners? Who do you think is getting these letters first?
Well, Shannon, I don't think it's a bit of a pause, because I think what's happened is there's a lot of congestion going into the home stretch. And you know, as part of the trade team, what's great about having President Trump on side is he's created maximum leverage. So by telling our trading partners that they could boomerang back to the April 2nd date, I think it's really going to move things along the next couple of days and weeks.
Okay, so let's talk about some analyses on these tariffs. From the AP, they say this: a J.P. Morgan Chase Institute analysis finds a critical group of U.S. employers would face a direct cost of $82.3 billion from President Donald Trump's current tariff plans. They go on to say the investment bank Goldman Sachs said in a report expects companies to pass 60% of their tariff costs onto consumers. Our most recent poll shows that 57% of Americans do think the tariffs are going to hurt the U.S. economy. So some of the experts, everyday Americans, they have real concerns about how this is going to cost them. What's your message to them?
Well, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. You know, I think TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, has turned into tariff derangement syndrome. As soon as you call them the Trump tariffs, 90% of Democrats hate them. And you know, I'm going to have to disagree with Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan. The empirical data shows that we have seen no inflation thus far, and you know, we'll see over the coming months. And you know, Shannon, there's a big difference in inflation and a one-time price adjustment also. Inflation is a generalized monetary phenomenon. We're not going to see that. And thus far, we haven't even seen the one-time price adjustments. What we are seeing, the business model for many of our trading partners, especially in Southeast Asia, is to produce produce. And the manufacturers in those countries are taking the price increases into, or the tariffs into their margins.
So let's talk about some of the specifics, because the EU, you've talked about that's notoriously difficult because you've got, 27 different entities that are feeding into this conversation. They've got a lot of leverage, frankly. They have talked about the fact that they're ready for retaliatory tariffs if this new level kicks in. I know there were talks through the weekend. Where are we with them?
It's moving along. We'll see where we go. They came to the table late. President Trump brought them to the table about 3 weeks ago with the threat of 50% tariffs. That got an immediate reaction from about 5 of the national leaders, and he had a call with Ursula von der Leyen right after. So we're getting much more fulsome negotiations. But Shannon, I would disagree with you. The leverage here is with the United States. We are the deficit country, the surplus country. The EU has a gigantic trading surplus with us. We have the leverage because their economy is much more export dependent than the U.S. In general, the U.S. is a very large closed service economy that our imports are quite low. We're a big economy, which makes the deficit numbers big.
Let's talk about Japan. The president said this week, tough to make a deal with them. He said they're very spoiled. How's that going?
Japan, again, they are great allies. I think that there may be a nuance here that they have upper house elections on July 20th, and a lot of the things that they're talking about require legislation, so we may have to see what happens with those elections.
Okay, I want to ask you, too, about the Fed chair. The president has said this week, among other things, called Jerome Powell a moron. They are not besties at this point, it appears. There's speculation now that he may go ahead and announce a replacement for him way early, since his term is not up until next May. Wall Street Journal reporting this. An early announcement could allow the chair in waiting to influence investor expectations about the likely path for rates, like a backseat driver attempting to steer monetary policy before Powell's term ends. You have demurred on whether you would be the guy for that job, but what do you think is the impact of all of this public back and forth with the Fed chair?
Well, Shannon, I'm a basketball fan, and in basketball, there are 2 schools of working the refs. There's the Bobby Knight school and the Dean Smith school. Obviously, President Trump's more in the Bobby Knight school, and I will tell you, Bobby Knight won 3 national championships. Dean Smith only won 2, so working the refs seems to be effective.
So there may be some chair throwing.
Sorry?
That's what you're saying. There might be some chair throwing if we're going with the Bobby Knight school of how this is done.
Think about this. There are good candidates already on the Fed board who for Fed chair, and they make their opinions known at every meeting. So I don't find that disruptive at all.
Okay. Mr. Secretary, great to have you with us. Thank you so much for the time.
Good to see you.
Hey, it's Will Kane. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Kane podcast for full episodes right now.